Captain, am I correct in assuming that you have decided to embark on a rescue mission?
That's right. Do you have a problem with that, Ensign?
I do. It is a direct violation of our orders from Starfleet Command, and it could precipitate an armed conflict between the Klingon Empire and the Federation.
Objection noted. Resume your station.
Sir, as a Starfleet officer, it is my duty to formally protest.
Tuvok.
A pretty bold statement for an ensign, with only 2 months space duty under his belt.
I am aware of my limited experience, but I am also very much aware of Starfleet regulations and my obligation to carry them out.
That's enough. Ensign, you're relieved. I'm sorry about this, Captain. I assure you it will not happen again.
Ensign, you're absolutely right. But you're also absolutely wrong. You'll find that more happens at the bridge of a starship than just carrying out orders and observing regulations. There's a sense of loyalty to the men and women you serve with. A sense of family. Those 2 men on trial, I served with them for a long time. I owe them my life 12 times over, and right now they're in trouble, and I'm going to help them. Let the regulations be damned.
Sir, that is the most illogical line of reasoning.
You better believe it. Helm, engage.
Hi, everybody, and welcome once again to GeekFest Rants. My name is Carlos Perron, and today I'm doing a special episode based on a convention we recently went to. A couple of weeks ago, the family and I headed south to Orlando, here in Florida, and we attended MegaCon. It was your typical big convention, huge dealer room, lots of panels, lots of guests, and one particular panel that we attended was the George Takei panel, where he talked a lot about some of his Star Trek memories, and he also talked about his current projects, both on Broadway, on the internet, he's huge, and a lot about also his activism, his social activism, and his, political views and that sort of thing. So what we have here to present to you is highlights from that panel. Just a quick note that, George is very open about his social beliefs and his political beliefs. So, if you're easily offended by his views, I would suggest you might want to skip that part. But we had a great time. The crowd absolutely loved his presentation, his show, his performance. So everybody enjoy. George Takei.
That is a fantastic welcome, and thank you very much for that. This is a very special occasion. Here we are on Memorial Day, and so it's appropriate, I think, to give our thoughts to the men and women throughout history who served our country. And this year is a very special year because Star Trek is celebrating its 50th birthday. Isn't that amazing? We have this quote and greeting, live long and prosper. Well, we have lived much longer than we ever expected. We were canceled after the 3rd season, despite the fact that at the beginning of each episode we were boldly going on a 5-year mission. We fought Klingons, Romulans, Andorians, all sorts of alien adversaries, but we found that ultimately the most destructive adversary were the NBC programming executives. 3 seasons, despite the fact that we announced 5 years. But you all showed them. You, the fans, because you're the ones who gave Star Trek this incredible longevity. Because you said, no, Star Trek is not going to die. And when we went into syndication, the syndicators put it on 5 nights a week, Monday through Friday. And particularly the college students, discovered Star Trek and raised the ratings way up there, to the point where Paramount at one point considered reviving Star Trek as a TV series. But, interestingly, it was Star Wars that gave us this additional life, because in 1978, Star Wars was released, and it exploded at the box office. And the ugly head of greed rose up at Paramount Studios. They wanted some of that box office, and they said, well, we have Star Trek right here in our own studios. Instead of reviving it as a television series, we need to revive it as a major feature film. And so in 1979, 10 years after we were canceled, Star Trek came back as Star Trek the Motion Picture, and it exploded at the box office. Primarily because you Star Trek fans not only came to see the Star Trek, the motion picture, the movie once, but you came back twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, and the box office grew and grew, and that's why we became a series of major motion pictures. And so they decided to do another one, and another one, and another one, and then now we've become rebooted with a brand new cast, so that I look young again as John Cho. Don't I look handsome? John Cho makes me young and handsome again. Ah, a man of good taste. And so we became this incredible phenomenon. But I think that what made this a long-lasting phenomenon is our producer and our creator, Gene Roddenberry. He was an extraordinary. Gene knew how to tell a good story, a good Rip Snorton good space opera, but he also wanted to use science fiction as a metaphor to talk about issues of our time, or back then in the 60s, issues that were boiling in America. Issues like the Civil Rights Movement, where African Americans were struggling for their equality in this country. There were issues that came out of the Vietnam War, which was tearing not only a small country in Southeast Asia apart, but it was tearing this country apart. People that supported it and people that were opposed to it. And young students were being shot down and killed in places like Ohio. We addressed that issue. And also in the 60s, we were at the coldest point in this thing called the Cold War. 2 great powers, the Soviet Union and the West, glaring at each other, threatening each other with mutual nuclear annihilation. And at a time like that, Gene Roddenberry said, we can deal with these problems of the 20th century and move on to the 23rd century if we have confidence in our problem-solving capabilities and in our genius for invention, innovation, and entrepreneurialism. And it was that, I think, that gave Star Trek that additional attraction. And so we gathered together in the spring of 1965 at back then it was called Desilu Studios, right next door to Paramount. And we gathered together in their conference room with the cast and with Gene Roddenberry and with other studio officials. And Gene told us that the story is going to take place on this vast starship called the Enterprise. It's got all the technology of the 23rd century, but it's really a metaphor for Starship Earth. And the strength of the starship lay in its diversity, coming together and working in concert as a team. People of many different races, many different cultures, many different histories, many different faiths, many different orientations, all coming together and looking at a common challenge and able to see it from many different perspectives. And that's what made it possible for the Starship Enterprise to be able to deal with that challenge, boldly going where no man had gone before. And it was that, I think, that connected with the people. And so there we were all gathered around this conference table. And Gene said, each one of you are going to represent some part of this planet. The captain of the starship represents North America, James T. Kirk. And he's going to be played by a Canadian. Bill Shatner from Montreal, Canada. And Europe was going to be represented by a Scottish engineer, Montgomery Scott. And he too is going to be played by another Canadian, Jimmy Doohan from Vancouver, British Columbia. Jimmy was a wonderful guy, a great, down-to-earth, jolly guy. Became a very good friend of mine, and also my favorite drinking buddy. And I learned a lot from Jimmy. Jim, at one of those drinking sessions, he told me that he's gotten famous playing a Scotsman, but he was actually of Irish ancestry. He said, I'm an Irish Canadian from Vancouver, British Columbia. But, he emphasized to me, I've drunk enough of the libation of Scotland to qualify for playing a Scotsman. And he qualified. I saw it. I'm a witness. He said, Gene Roddenberry said, Africa is going to be represented by an African woman, Nyota Uhura. And she's going to be played by the beautiful Nichelle Nichols. But Nichelle told me that she's not only of African ancestry, she's also part French. She has French blood in her. And she also has Cherokee blood, a Native American. So she was actually the most American of us all. And there's that other part of this planet called Asia. And that's going to be represented by an Asian character, played by me. But he said he had trouble finding a name for the Asian character because all Asian surnames, all Asian last names are nationally specific. Tanaka is Japanese, Wong is Chinese, Kim is Korean. And 20th century Asia was turbulent with warfare, colonization, and revolutions. And he didn't want to take sides by taking any national specific name. He wanted to have a name that suggested all of Asia, Pan-Asia. And so he had a map of Asia pinned on his office wall. And he said he was staring at it one day, and he saw that off the coast of the Philippines was an ocean called the Sulu Sea. And he thought, the waters of a sea touch all shores. And so that's how he came up with the name Sue. And I was privileged to play that part. But to really underscore diversity coming together, he had a first officer named Spock, who was by species. 2 species, not 2 races. His mother was an Earth woman, and his father was a Vulcan. He said, this is infinite diversity in infinite combinations. And that became the motto of the Starship Enterprise, the acronym IDIC, IDIC, for infinite diversity in infinite combinations. But in the 2nd season, he added another dimension to it. This was a time of the Cold War, and he added a Russian character, a character named Pavel Chekhov, who was proud of his Russian heritage. And this character was played by someone who became a good friend of mine, Walter Koenig. So, infinite diversity in infinite combinations. And so it was a very optimistic and utopian view of the human future that he presented. And I think that's why Star Trek, generation after generation, has gathered friends and fans. And looking out there were a lot of original fans here, I can see. I can tell just by looking. By the color of your hair, or the lack thereof. But those original fans multiplied. They created progenies. You multiplied like triples, generation after generation. And so that's why we have this vast fandom of Star Trek that keeps going to the movies and supporting the spin-off shows and buying Star Trek mugs and keychains. And now we're even action figures. My mother used to tell me that when I was a little boy, all her friends would say, "Oh, Mrs. Takei, your son is such a doll." And she said, "Well, you're a grown man now, but you're now a real doll." And so Star Trek is celebrating its 50th anniversary, and we're very, very proud of that. And we're grateful to you. So with that, let's begin the fun part, the conversation, your thoughts, your comments, your criticisms, and your opinions. So let's start with my right.
Hi George, it's an honor. I'm Daniel. Your line of work is amazing, but I really wanted to thank you for all the work you've done for the LGBT community. Geeks out there, and you've reached like an amazing new audience outside of Star Trek through social media, and you post some hilarious stuff. I wanted to know, like, what criteria do you use to basically choose what you post, and like, have you ever gotten into like some major trouble for anything?
Well, you have a lot of questions in that one statement that you made. Yes, the LGBT issue is an important issue of our times, and I wanted to address that because I too am gay, but I've been closeted most of my life. And it wasn't until 2005 when something extraordinary happened. Massachusetts in 2003 got marriage equality for LGBT people via the Supreme Court of the state of Massachusetts. Yes, let's give them that. They were at the spearhead. They were number one. But in 2005, California did something equally amazing. Massachusetts got it through the courts. There's Massachusetts State Supreme Court. But in California, it was our legislature, the people's representative, both houses of our legislature, the Assembly and the Senate, passed the marriage equality bill. And all that bill needed to become the law of the state of California was the signature of our governor, who happened to be a movie star then, Arnold Schwarzenegger. When he campaigned to become governor, he campaigned by saying, I'm from Hollywood. I've worked with gays and lesbians. Some of my best friends are gays and lesbians. And so I thought surely with that kind of campaign rhetoric, that he would sign the bill. But what he was elected, his base was the right wing of the Republican Party. And he played to that base of his, and he vetoed that bill. I was raging. Here we had the opportunity to become a marriage equality state, and this governor who campaigned that way vetoed it. He was a hypocrite. And later we found out that at that time that he was vetoing the marriage equality bill, he was carrying on with his housekeeper right under his wife's nose. I mean, what a hypocrite. I was raging. I'd been together with Brad for about 21 years by that time. But that night, we were at home watching the late night news. And we saw on the late night news young people pouring out on the Santa Monica Boulevard, venting their rage on Arnold Schwarzenegger. And we felt that same rage. But we were at home, comfortable, watching TV. And we talked about it. And we said, well, I've had a good career, and maybe it's time for me to go on the downhill side and take some chances. And so we made a decision, and I talked to the press for the first time as a gay American, and I blasted Arnold Schwarzenegger's veto. So I've been active in the LGBT movement ever since, and amazing things have been happening. One state after another started getting marriage equality, mostly through their state Supreme Courts. It was a patchwork of marriage equality. But last year, 2015, the Supreme Court of the United States of America ruled that marriage equality is a national ruling. From border to border, from coast to coast, we have marriage equality. So we are making progress, but it's a continuing struggle, because those that are opposed to equality for LGBT people want to find some way to lash back, and it's happening. As we know right now in North Carolina and Mississippi, the battleground has now become the bathroom of all places. And the governor of North Carolina's argument, Governor Pat McCrory, is we don't want to have pedophiles in little girls' bathrooms. And so when the press asked him, well, has there been a case? Can you name a case when that happened? And he says, well, I'll look into it. There has been no case of pedophiles in girls' bathrooms. He's created an issue where none exists. He's created the problem where there was no problem. And so we're still getting the backlash of people who resist equality for all people. But we're engaged in the LGBT equality movement because it's good for the whole society. We make society healthier and more vibrant, a better society. And so LGBT activism is very important. Sometimes I think in certain cases, you can ridicule some of these politicians to death. For example, in Tennessee, a state politician came up with this incredible notion of criminalizing the use of the word gay by school teachers. School teachers, of all people, who need to give guidance and understanding and compassionate assistance to young people who are making discoveries about themselves. If they used the word gay, they were going to be jailed for a week and fined $1,000. Outrageous. So we could have gotten angry. But I said to myself, that is so stupid, I'm going to make fun of it. I said, my last name, Takei, rhymes with gay. So if you want to use the word gay, but it's going to criminalize you, just substitute my name for gay and march in a Takei pride parade. That bill got laughed to death. So, humor can kill ridiculous bills. And that's why I use humor. Now you ask, how do I choose it? Yes. Well, actually, it's the fans who send me all these wonderful memes. And we get a kick out of it. So we repost it. It's a sharing medium, and we believe in sharing it. Thank you for asking about that.
Yes, sir. Any chance we'll see you in a cameo role or some kind of role in any of the upcoming Star Trek projects?
There's every chance in the world if they invite me. Leonard did 2 cameos for the rebooted J.J. Abrams show. As a matter of fact, something interesting happened. For the first rebooted show, I heard that, Leonard was going to be doing a cameo. And then I got a phone call from J.J. Abrams' office asking me to have breakfast with him. I thought, maybe there's a cameo for me, too. And so I was eagerly looking forward to that breakfast. I met him. He was a charming man, he's high energy, very energized, and he had a lot of great ideas. And so I enjoyed the first 20 minutes of chatting with him. But then it turned out he wanted my opinion on someone he was going to cast as Sue, my character. He told me that he looked at many Japanese American actors because I'm Japanese American, and he wanted to, keep that consistent. But he said, I found another actor who's not Japanese American that I'm seriously considering. And I asked him, well, is he Asian American? And he said, yes, he is. And I told him that's what's important. Because, as I told you a little bit earlier, Gene Roddenberry wasn't casting nationalistically. He was casting for someone to represent all of Asia, what the best actor he could find. And I said, as long as you found a good actor who's an Asian American, that's in keeping with Gene Roddenberry's vision. And I realized that JJ did not really know Gene Roddenberry's philosophy. And I asked him, who are you thinking of? And he said, I'm thinking of John Cho. And I said, that's a very good choice, because I've known him when he was a young teenager. We have a theater company in Los Angeles called the East West Players, an Asian American theater company, and the oldest continuously operating theater company in the United States of a minority group. And I've seen John from the time he was young. He's a very conscientious actor, does his homework, and he's a very fine actor. And I think he would make a great Sue. And comforted by that, he went ahead and cast John Cho. So that was what happened with the possibility that I thought was my cameo. They've never invited me, but you fans can make the difference. Write letters, emails, convince them. The one that's coming out this summer is already made, but I know that that's going to be a big success, and there'll be another one. So get to your computers and start getting those fingers moving. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, it's an honor to meet you, and my name is Addison, and I'm 8 years old. I want to know...
Your prompter behind you.
I was just telling her to calm down.
I want to know how it felt to be here in Nakamura.
Heroes? You're talking about Heroes?
Yeah, Heroes is her favorite show, and she wanted to know how it was to play Hiro Nakamura's dad.
I had a great time, and I worked in Star Trek to that too. Did you notice the license plate on Mr. Nakamura's limousine? NCC 1701. And those that caught it, they were confined in their living rooms. What's your name, young man?
Her name's Addison.
Oh, Addison. Well, you know, when you're young, I think we sound like each other, male and female. We have a nice pitch to our voices. Thank you for that question. I enjoyed playing Mr. Nakamura. He was a powerful man, but we didn't quite reveal his special superpower because we got canceled before we were able to do that. That's the thing about television storytelling. You don't know when to come out with the punchline because of the cancellation threat. But you want to, you want the series to be a success, and you want to hold back on some of the plot points. I didn't know what my power was either, so they didn't allow me to find out until, well, they never did. They canceled that. Oh, I'm sorry, sweetie. She's embarrassed.
Hi, big fan. I know you're mostly well known for Star Trek, but you have Allegiance is out on Broadway right now. And in addition to yourself, it looks like it was a fabulous cast. I was just wondering if you had any really good stories from that.
Allegiance? Mm-hmm. Well, it's a story. It's a musical that I'm very, very proud of. We closed, as a matter of fact, in February, and now we're applauding the post-Broadway life of Allegiance. At this point, we're planning a West Coast tour, and we've gotten invitations from Southeast Asia and Japan. So we're going to play Manila, Singapore, and Tokyo, but in the United States, we're going to play the West Coast, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Seattle. But depending on how it goes with those planned runs, we did a convention last weekend in Kansas City. And I discovered from the people there that Kansas City is a great theater town. Kinky Boots is coming, Newsies is coming, and Wicked has played there. So, we might, if we're successful with the West Coast run, we might consider going to the Midwest. Chicago is a great theater town. And what city in Florida is a good theater town? What is the one city that is the most... Tampa. Orlando. Well, I love Tampa. That's what I hear most of. Who? Jacksonville. Well, we'll do some research and see, look at what the box office in each of these cities are. But I can't say for sure about the rest of America now. So, but let me suggest, if you missed Allegiance on Broadway, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Seattle are wonderful places to have a vacation. Start saving your money for a vacation on the West Coast.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking that question.
Hi. Hopefully I'm not as nervous as Addison. So I just wanted to commend you. I think you're a huge role model because of your work in the LGBTQ community and in raising awareness of the Japanese internment camps.
A Japanese American.
Japanese American internment camp, sorry.
We were in prison. We're Americans, and we were imprisoned by our own government in our own country. Our family was sent to the swamps of Arkansas. Japanese internment camps were run by the government of Japan. Our internment camps were run by the U.S. government with U.S. soldiers. So that distinction is very important.
And because you're such a huge role model, I would like to know, of the 3 candidates, who will you be voting for?
Here I am in Florida. What color is Florida? Is it blue, red, or purple?
Purple.
You think purple? I think so too. I think so too. One thing I'm definitely sure of, and I'm vigorously working for, is to make sure that Donald Trump is never the president of the United States. Japanese American was chilled when he began his sweeping statements about minorities, characterizing immigrants from south of the border as rapists and drug dealers and murderers, or when he said all Muslims should be banned from entry into the United States. You know, people who are uninformed are swept up by that. Yes, the terrorists were and are Muslims, but there are millions and millions of Muslims all over this planet who are not terrorists. And to characterize all those millions of people of one faith as Muslims, as terrorists, was outrageous. I, as a Japanese American, immediately got a chill when he made those statements. Because the same thing happened to Japanese Americans. When Pearl Harbor was bombed, we have to look like the people that bombed Pearl Harbor. And Japanese Americans were looked at with suspicion and fear and outright hatred. And politicians started fanning the flames of that kind of ignorant fear. In California, we had an attorney general who knew the Constitution. He was attorney general. But he was ambitious. He wanted to run for governor of California. And he saw that the single most popular issue was to lock up the Japanese issue. And so this attorney general, who knew the law, became an outspoken advocate of locking up the Japanese. And he made an amazing statement. He said, we have no reports of sabotage or spying or fifth column activity by Japanese Americans. And that is ominous, because the Japanese are inscrutable. That's that stereotype, inscrutable. You don't know what they're thinking, so we better lock them up before they do anything. So for this Attorney General, the absence of evidence was the evidence. And that fanned the flame to the point where the President of the United States ordered all Japanese Americans on the West Coast to be rounded up. That man ran for governor, and he won, became governor. He was re-elected twice, and then he was appointed to be the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. Some of you will recognize his name, Earl Warren, the so-called liberal Chief Justice of the United States. He never owned up to what he did during the Second World War. But in his memoirs that was published after he died, he said, the one regret that I have in my political career is the internment of Japanese Americans. So, people who can do great things are also fallible human beings. And I don't want to say Donald Trump can do great things other than build hotels. But he is a fallible human being, and he is fanning the flames of people who don't know history. In fact, as a matter of fact, we happened to be doing Allegiance on Broadway at that time. And I thought Donald could learn from, benefit from seeing Allegiance. So I extended an invitation to him, both personally as well as publicly in social media and morning talk shows, and I invited him to come see Allegiance. And we found a seat, an aisle seat, that we reserved for him for every performance. We had a sign there saying, this seat reserved for Mr. Donald Trump. And we had a countdown on the number of shows he missed throughout the run. He never showed up. He missed 89 performances. And he never learned. And a man like that, who can advocate such a thing, that chilling racism and fear-mongering, does not deserve to be the President of the United States. And thank you for that applause. We will make sure that Donald Trump is not the President of the United States. And I've been given the high sign, so that's a note to end on. Never have Donald Trump as a President of the United States. Thank you very much. May we all live long and prosper.
Well, this brings us to the end of today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. Just a couple of quick plugs here. Please take the time to take a look at MetroCon. MetroCon is coming to Tampa, Florida, and we'll be there to enjoy the show. Check out this anime and cosplay extravaganza from July 21st to the 24th. We're going to be there. Get a peek at its intriguing programming at www.metroconventions.com and look for a GeekFest Rants episode on the world of cosplay in the near future. And also, put down on your calendar, August 17th to the 21st, we are promoting the Mid-Americon 2, this is the 74th WorldCon convention, which is happening in Kansas City Convention Center, Kansas City, Missouri. The reason we're promoting this particular event is because one of our show friends, Charles Lippincott, is going to be there. He is the mastermind behind the merchandising and licensing of the original Star Wars film, as we mentioned on a previous show that we've done. He is going to be there recreating his convention promotional tour that he used to do back in 1976, 77, right before the movie came out, where he would display props from the film and have a slideshow talking about it, this is how they used to do things back then. But anyway, he's going to be doing that for the first time. If you happen to be in the area, this would be an absolutely perfect way of meeting Charles and getting to see that presentation that he did so many years ago, which again, it's not done like that anymore. If you're a real deep Star Wars fan, into the nitty-gritty making of aspects of the film, this is perfect. And I believe this will also be available on video at a later time. So on behalf of everybody here, I'd like to thank you for joining us, and we will see you soon here at GeekFest Rants. Bye-bye, everybody.
Hello out there. I'm Mr. Sulu of Star Trek.
As far as I can remember, I've always been me.
I have to tell you that in my email, no one gets more positives than George.
I totally love your smart humor on Facebook.
I was the best helmsman in the galaxy and put to rest all that stereotype about Asian drivers.
Aye, aye, sir. Warp 3. My father told me, look at the kind of roles that Asians are playing. And I said, Daddy, I'm going to change it.
There weren't many Asians on television, so when George would come on, it would be a special thing.
And he was kind of a sex symbol.
in order for me to have a viable career. I was closeted.
I can't imagine what it would be like to have to hide that identity.
We're a good fit because Brad is detail-oriented, but he sometimes gets a little overwhelmed.
This is our right. This is our house. We're not filming in front of our house.
He gets so nervous. My life has been transformed as fantastically as science fiction. As a boy, I looked out on the world, imprisoned behind the barbed wire fences of American internment camps. It was a painful moment there. I don't believe in negativity. You determine your destiny.
George is the love of my life. I'm proud of him.
I've heard that before.
You know, what makes him appealing is that people feel like they have a very real connection to him.
I hope he realizes what he has succeeded in doing.
It's okay to be Takei.
Can you open the Fritos, please?
Oh, my.
Stop.